Have you ever felt that uncontrollable surge, a rush of anger, a flood of frustration, an immediate burning need to lash out, only to be consumed by a tidal wave of regret moments later? What if the greatest power wasn't in reacting, but in the deliberate, almost magical pause before you do? This is the story of how that single tiny moment of stillness can change everything. And as you watch this story, know that by simply being here and listening, you are patiently working to make your English better. Be proud of this step, always. Chapter 1: The Echoes of Reaction. The air in the conference room was thick with anticipation. Ilara gripped the edges of her presentation notes, her knuckles white. This was it, the culmination of months of work, the project that could define her career. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. And finally, Ilara announced, her voice a little shaky but clear, our analysis suggests a radical shift in market strategy, focusing on... Suddenly, a dry, dismissive cough interrupted her. Mr. Harrison, the senior VP, leaned back in his chair, a skeptical look on his face. "Ilara," he drawled, his tone dripping with condescension, "your numbers look optimistic. Far too optimistic, in fact. Are you sure you've accounted for all variables, or is this just wishful thinking?" A hot flush spread across Ilara's neck and cheeks. Her meticulously prepared arguments vanished from her mind. It felt like a physical blow. Her vision narrowed. Wishful thinking? After all those sleepless nights? A familiar heat surged through her veins, a burning injustice. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrison," Ilara snapped, her voice rising, each word sharper than the last. "I assure you, these figures are rigorously calculated. Perhaps if you had taken the time to review the preliminary reports I sent, you would understand the methodology better, instead of making baseless assumptions." The room fell silent. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mr. Harrison's eyes, which had been dismissive, now hardened into an icy glare. He merely raised an eyebrow, a slow, deliberate gesture that spoke volumes. The energy in the room shifted from productive discussion to awkward tension. Ilara immediately felt a cold wave of regret wash over her. The words were out, the damage was done. Her carefully constructed argument had been replaced by a raw, emotional outburst. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Her project was tabled, her ideas sidelined. Later that afternoon, her manager, Miss Davies, called Ilara into her office. Miss Davies spoke calmly but firmly. "Ilara, your work is usually exceptional, but your reaction in that meeting, it undermined your entire presentation. You gave them a reason to dismiss you, not your data." Ilara could only nod, a knot in her stomach. Walking home that evening, the heavy feeling of remorse weighed her down. This wasn't new. It was a pattern. A quick word, a sharp tone, an immediate, unthinking response to criticism or frustration. A minor argument with her brother last week had escalated into a shouting match over something trivial. A sudden honk in traffic would trigger a stream of angry words. Each time, the feeling was the same, a momentary burst of energy followed by crushing regret and exhaustion. "Why do I keep doing this?" she asked herself, kicking a loose stone on the pavement. "Why can't I just stop? Why can't I control it?" The question echoed in her mind, a quiet plea for change. She longed for a different way, a life where she wasn't constantly battling her own immediate, often destructive reactions. She knew there had to be something more, a way to find peace amidst the chaos, a way to truly master her responses, not just her words. Chapter 2: The Whispers of Wisdom. The aftermath of the disastrous meeting hung over Alara like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Every corridor she walked down seemed to echo with Mr. Harrison's sneering words. Every quiet conversation between colleagues felt like a judgment. She found herself avoiding the break room, preferring to eat her lunch quickly at her desk, lost in thought. The usual vibrancy of the office, once a source of energy, now felt oppressive. Each chime of a phone or burst of laughter a stark contrast to the churning anxiety in her gut. She was tired, not just physically, but deeply, emotionally drained. The cycle of reacting, regretting, and then reacting again was an invisible chain, binding her to a constant state of turmoil. One afternoon, seeking refuge from the relentless hum of the office, Alara found herself in the quiet, seldom-used section of the company library. It was a dusty place, filled with old reference books and forgotten reports, a sanctuary from the digital noise. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just a moment of peace, a quiet corner where she could breathe. As she aimlessly ran her fingers along the spines of books, a figure emerged from behind a tall bookshelf. It was Marcus, one of the company's most senior architects. Marcus was an enigma. He rarely spoke loudly, yet his words carried immense weight. He never seemed ruffled, even in the most chaotic project meetings. Alara had often watched him, fascinated, as he navigated heated debates with an almost serene calm, his responses always measured, his advice always profound. While others shouted or stormed out, Marcus would simply listen, his gaze steady, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm. He smiled gently at Alara. "Seeking wisdom, Alara?" His voice was soft, melodic, like a quiet stream. Alara managed a weak smile in return. "Something like that, Marcus. Or maybe just a moment of quiet." Marcus nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Quiet is a good place to start. It's where everything truly begins, wouldn't you agree?" He gestured to a worn, leather-bound book in his hand. "I was just revisiting some old friends here, a wonderful collection of ancient philosophies. They all seem to touch upon a similar truth in their own unique ways." Alara felt a strange pull, a curiosity she hadn't expected. "What truth is that?" Marcus leaned against the bookshelf, seemingly at peace with the world. "The space," he began, his voice a low, thoughtful murmur, "between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. Most people, Alara, live their lives in a continuous loop of reaction. Something happens, they react, and that reaction often leads to another problem, another reaction. It's a relentless current pulling them along." He paused, looking at her with a knowing, compassionate gaze that seemed to see right through her recent struggles. "But there is another way, a way to step out of that current, to find solid ground." Ilara's heart fluttered. His words resonated with an almost painful accuracy. "But how? It feels uncontrollable sometimes, like a wave that just crashes over you." She thought of Mr. Harrison's dismissive cough and the immediate fiery surge that had consumed her. Marcus chuckled softly. "Indeed, it feels like a wave. But even the mightiest wave begins with a ripple. And between that ripple and the crash, there is a moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible moment. That, Alara, is where our true power lies. It's not about suppressing the wave or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about creating a conscious pause, a moment of stillness right there in the eye of the storm. A moment to breathe, to observe, to choose." He opened the old book to a page marked with a thin leather bookmark. "These old masters," he continued, tracing a line of ancient script, "they called it many things: mindfulness, detachment, inner peace. But the core idea is simple. Don't react immediately. Don't let the initial impulse control you. Give yourself the gift of a breath, of a thought, of a question." "A question?" Ilara asked, intrigued. Yes, Marcus affirmed. Before you react, ask yourself, is this response truly serving me? Is it leading me towards the outcome I desire, or simply feeding the fire? Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all, or a delayed one, or one that is completely different from what your emotions initially demand. Ilara considered his words. A conscious pause. The idea felt revolutionary, yet strangely familiar, like a half-forgotten dream. She had always believed that quick thinking, quick action was strength, but her quick reactions had brought her nothing but regret. Marcus was suggesting something entirely different, a strength born of stillness, of deliberate choice. It wasn't about stifling her feelings, but about steering her ship through the emotional currents rather than letting the currents capsize her. But what if I can't stop it? She asked, her voice small. What if the wave is too strong? Marcus smiled again, a warm, reassuring smile. It's a practice, Ilara, not a destination. And like any practice, it begins with small steps, with awareness. Simply noticing that surge, that impulse, is the first and most crucial step. Like a scientist observing a phenomenon in a lab. No judgment, just pure observation. And then, little by little, you begin to stretch that moment, that tiny pause, until it becomes a vast, open space where wisdom can bloom. He looked around the library, his eyes sweeping over the quiet shelves. This quiet place, it's a good metaphor, isn't it? A space where you can hear the whispers of wisdom instead of the shouts of impulse. As he spoke, Ilara found herself taking a deeper breath than she had in days. The tension in her shoulders began to ease. The concept, though simple in its explanation, felt profound. It wasn't about becoming emotionless, but about becoming the master of her emotions, rather than their slave. It was about creating space for choice, not just in her reactions, but in their very thoughts. Marcus glanced at his watch. Ah, duty calls. But I hope our little chat has given you something to ponder. He patted her gently on the shoulder before turning to leave. Remember, Ilara, the most powerful response is often the one that takes the longest to form, or the one that never forms at all. Ilara watched him go, his quiet wisdom lingering in the air. The idea of the conscious pause began to settle in her mind, a seed planted in the fertile ground of her recent despair. She picked up a random book from the shelf, but her mind was no longer on its contents. It was replaying Marcus's words, experimenting with that tiny, powerful space. She suddenly felt a glimmer of hope, a faint light in the darkness that had surrounded her. Could this truly be the answer? Could she learn to find that stillness, to cultivate that pause, and in doing so, regain control of her own emotional landscape, and perhaps even improve her ability to articulate her thoughts clearly and calmly in English? The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. If you're finding Ilara's journey helpful for both life and language, and enjoying how she's learning to master her responses, consider giving this video a like to let us know more. Chapter 3. The First Steps of Stillness. The conversation with Marcus lingered in Ilara's mind long after she left the library. His words, the space between what happens and how we choose to respond, played on a loop, a quiet refrain against the usual chaotic symphony of her thoughts. It was a simple concept, almost deceptively so, yet it promised a liberation she desperately craved. Could it truly be that easy? To just pause? To create that space? Her cynical side scoffed. Her entire life had been a series of immediate, often regrettable reactions. Breaking that deeply ingrained pattern felt like trying to stop a runaway train with a single hand. Yet a tiny spark of hope had been lit. She decided to try. She would begin with the smallest moments, the fleeting irritations that typically set her off. The next morning, as she navigated the notoriously congested city traffic, her first test arrived. A yellow cab, without signaling, abruptly cut her off, forcing her to brake sharply and sending her coffee sloshing over the console. Her immediate, visceral reaction was a familiar one, a jolt of anger, a sharp inhale of breath, and the urge to hunk furiously, perhaps even yell a few choice words out the window. But then Marcus's words echoed. Give yourself the gift of a breath, of a thought, of a question. Ilara consciously held her breath. She didn't honk, she didn't yell. Instead, she slowly, deliberately exhaled. She felt the urge to react, a physical tightening in her chest, but she didn't act on it. She simply observed it, like watching a cloud pass by in the sky. It was incredibly difficult, a small internal battle. Her hand still twitched towards the horn, her jaw was clenched tight, but she resisted. The cab sped off. And in that moment, instead of the usual surge of adrenaline followed by frustration, she felt a strange quiet. Her heart rate, though still elevated, began to settle. The coffee stain was annoying, but the internal storm that usually followed such an event was conspicuously absent. It wasn't a grand victory, but it was a pause, a tiny, precious sliver of stillness. At work, the challenges continued. During a team brainstorming session, a new intern, perhaps a little too eager, inadvertently took credit for an idea Ilara had shared moments before. Ilara felt the familiar prick of indignation, the instant desire to interject, to correct him sharply, to defend her intellectual territory. Her mouth opened slightly. Is this response truly serving me? Marcus's question floated into her mind. She closed her mouth. She took a quiet breath. She looked at the intern, whose face was bright with enthusiasm. She looked at her colleagues, who seemed to accept the idea as a good one, regardless of its origin. A moment stretched. Ilara decided to let it go. Later, in a private conversation, she subtly clarified the original thought with her manager, but the public confrontation she would have once initiated was avoided. The outcome was the same. Her idea was acknowledged, but the emotional toll on her, and potentially on the team dynamic, was entirely different. She felt a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about being a doormat, it was about choosing the battle, and the method, wisely. These small daily attempts were often clumsy. There were times she failed spectacularly. One evening, her brother, Liam, called, complaining about a trivial family matter. Liam had a way of pushing her buttons, and Ilara's patience quickly wore thin. Despite her best efforts to pause, the old habits were too strong. She found herself snapping back, her voice escalating, the conversation spiraling into a familiar argument. As soon as she hung up, the crushing wave of regret returned, heavier this time because she had tried to stop it and failed. She slumped onto her sofa, burying her face in her hands. It's impossible, she thought. I'm too far gone. But then, a memory of Marcus's gentle voice. It's a practice, Ilara, not a destination. And like any practice, it begins with small steps. He hadn't promised perfection, only a journey. This failure wasn't the end. It was part of the learning curve. Determined, Ilara started actively seeking out resources. She remembered Marcus's worn book. She started spending her lunch breaks online, researching mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and communication strategies. She stumbled upon a series of short, accessible, graded reader articles and audio lessons specifically designed to improve English fluency through practical life skills. One article, titled "The Power of the Pause," immediately caught her eye. It spoke of various scenarios where a deliberate pause could de-escalate conflict, improve understanding, and even foster creativity. The language was simple enough for her to follow comfortably, yet rich enough to introduce new vocabulary and sentence structures related to emotional regulation and communication. She read about the importance of observing her physical reactions, the tightening jaw, the racing heart, the tensing shoulders, as signals to pause. The article suggested a simple exercise. When feeling overwhelmed, simply naming the emotion. I am feeling frustrated. I am feeling angry. This act of labeling, it explained, created a tiny separation between the emotion and her identity, allowing a sliver of space for choice. It also introduced new ways of expressing these complex feelings in English, offering phrases like, "I sense a rising tension," or "I need a moment to process this." She started incorporating these new techniques into her daily life. Instead of automatically replying to a demanding email with an equally demanding tone, she would draft it, leave it for 10 minutes, and then reread it, softening the edges, replacing accusatory language with collaborative phrasing. She noticed her English improving subtly. She was choosing words more carefully, constructing sentences more thoughtfully, no longer just blurting out the first thing that came to mind. Her vocabulary, especially around emotional states and diplomatic responses, began to expand. One Friday afternoon, a critical software bug was discovered, threatening to derail a major client delivery. The atmosphere in the office became frantic. Phones rang off the hook, voices grew louder, and panic began to set in. Ilara felt the familiar pang of anxiety, the urge to jump into the fray, to frantically troubleshoot and blame. But this time, a new voice, calmer and clearer, spoke within her. Pause. Observe. She took a slow, deep breath, counting to 3. She felt the internal pressure, but instead of succumbing to it, she detached herself for a moment. She looked around the room, observing the chaos objectively. She saw her colleagues rushing, making quick, uncoordinated decisions. She saw the manager looking overwhelmed. In that brief moment of stillness, while everyone else was reacting, a thought, clear and concise, formed in her mind. Instead of yelling a solution or complaining about the problem, she walked calmly to her manager's desk. "Miss Davies," she said, her voice steady amidst the commotion, "I've noticed a pattern in these types of bugs before. I think we need to first isolate the data input error, and then we can systematically retest the integration points. Rushing will only lead to more mistakes." Miss Davies, startled by Ilara's composure in the storm, looked at her, truly looked at her. "You're right, Ilara," she said, her voice dropping. "You're absolutely right. Let's do that. Everyone, listen to Ilara for a moment." The room quieted. Ilara, without raising her voice, calmly outlined a step-by-step approach. Her internal reaction system, though still present, was no longer in the driver's seat. She was guiding it. This was a significant leap. It wasn't about suppressing her emotions, but about acknowledging them and then choosing her response, strategically and effectively. The bug was still a challenge, but the solution, guided by Ilara's newfound composure, came much faster and with far less friction. The quiet strength she exuded was palpable, a testament to that deliberate, conscious pause. She realized that the calm she was cultivating within was also allowing her English, her means of expressing herself, to become clearer, more precise, and more impactful. Ilara's small steps led to significant changes. If you're enjoying learning how to apply these ideas to your life and improve your English, don't forget to subscribe for more insights like this. Your support helps our community grow. Chapter 4. Overcoming the Storm. Ilara's small victories in traffic and team meetings had slowly begun to build her confidence. The conscious pause was no longer just an abstract concept. It was a tangible tool, a mental anchor she could grasp in moments of rising tension. She felt a subtle shift within her, a growing sense of control not over her emotions themselves, but over the space around them. Her vocabulary had expanded, allowing her to articulate her inner state with greater precision, replacing impulsive shouts with considered statements like, "I need a moment to gather my thoughts," or "I feel a strong reaction forming, and I want to ensure my response is constructive." This newfound clarity in thought translated directly into improved English fluency, her words becoming less a torrent of raw feeling and more a carefully navigated stream of intent. But life, as it often does, had a way of presenting its most formidable challenges when one least expected them. A critical new initiative, dubbed the Synergy Project, was being unveiled at the company's annual shareholder meeting. This project was Ilara's brainchild, a bold proposal to integrate two previously separate departments, promising massive efficiency gains. She had poured months into its development, crafting every detail, every projection.
Her direct manager, Miss Davies, had championed it, but it was Ilara who was the driving force, the architect of its complex structure. The day of the shareholder meeting dawned crisp and bright, a deceptive calm before the storm. Ilara, dressed impeccably, felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. This was her moment. She sat in the front row, ready to support Miss Davies during the presentation. The CEO began with a powerful opening, setting the stage for the groundbreaking initiatives. Then Miss Davies took the podium, a confident smile on her face. She spoke eloquently about the company's vision, building up to the grand reveal of the Synergy project. As she began to delve into the specifics, she gestured towards a man Ilara knew only as Richard Thorne, a senior manager from a rival department, who was widely known to be a protege of Mr. Harrison, the same VP who had dismissed Ilara's work months ago. And now, Miss Davies announced, to present the groundbreaking details of the Synergy project, the innovative vision of Mr. Richard Thorne. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Her blood ran cold, then boiled. Richard Thorne! The words hit her like a physical blow, sharper and more devastating than any dismissive cough. This was her project. Every slide, every data point, every innovative idea was hers. Richard Thorne had attended a few steering committee meetings, yes, offered some minor feedback, but he had done nothing substantial. This was an outright, blatant act of professional theft, orchestrated with shocking audacity in front of the entire company leadership and its investors. The familiar volcanic surge erupted within her. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drum. Her face felt hot, her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. A primal scream of outrage formed in her throat, demanding release. She wanted to leap up, to shout, to expose the lie, to demand justice. The room, with its hushed anticipation, seemed to mock her. The spotlight was on Thorne, on her work being presented by someone else. Her vision, her effort, her career, all being hijacked. It was the deepest professional betrayal she had ever experienced. For a terrifying second, she felt the old Ilara taking over, the impulsive, explosive Ilara. She could almost feel the words forming on her tongue, cutting and destructive. This was the biggest wave yet, threatening to engulf her completely, to drag her back into the abyss of regret. But then, a different voice, faint at first, then clearer, whispered in her mind. The space between what happens and how we choose to respond. She saw Marcus's calm face, heard his gentle voice. A moment to breathe, to observe, to choose. Ilara closed her eyes just for a fraction of a second. She focused on the feeling of her feet on the ground, rooting herself. She took a slow, deep breath, counting silently to 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 6. She felt the rage, the betrayal, the humiliation, but she observed it rather than becoming it. It was like watching a furious storm from inside a very strong, stable house. The wind howled, the rain lashed, but the house stood firm. Is this response truly serving me? Marcus's question resonated. If she reacted now, she would be seen as emotional, unprofessional, perhaps even unstable. She would confirm Mr. Harrison's earlier dismissal of her. Her credibility would be destroyed, and her project, no matter how brilliant, would be lost in the ensuing scandal. An emotional outburst would not undo the theft, it would only amplify her personal humiliation. Her mind, usually a chaotic whirlwind in such moments, became remarkably clear. She needed facts, not fury. She needed strategy, not scandal. She needed to respond, not react. While Thorne confidently presented her slides, discussing her market analysis and her proposed implementation plan, Ilara began to work. She didn't interrupt. She didn't make a scene. Instead, she took out her phone, opened her encrypted project files, and quickly began cross-referencing presentation slides with her own detailed documentation. Timestamps, email chains, draft versions, meeting minutes, and the original proposals she had meticulously submitted. She was building an irrefutable case, not for a public spectacle, but for a calm, irrefutable intervention.
When Thorne finished, a smattering of applause filled the room. Miss Davies, perhaps sensing a slight unease, or perhaps just being procedural, opened the floor for questions. Ilara raised her hand calmly, her expression neutral. "Yes, Ilara," Miss Davies said, looking surprised to see her raise her hand. Ilara stood up, her posture straight, her voice clear and steady, devoid of any anger or accusation. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for that comprehensive overview of the Synergy project. It's certainly a compelling vision. I just have a few clarifying questions for the benefit of the shareholders and the strategic direction of the company." Thorne, caught off guard, nodded, a forced smile on his face. "Of course, Ilara." "Regarding slide 12, Ilara continued, her voice measured, which outlines the projected Q3 efficiency gains, my internal modeling, which I submitted for review on March 15th, indicated a slightly different growth curve due to the phased integration of legacy systems. Could you elaborate on the updated calculations that led to this revised projection?" She paused, her gaze unwavering. She wasn't accusing him. She was asking a technical question, one that only someone intimately familiar with the project's minutiae could answer accurately. Thorne stumbled. Yes, the revised projections, those were based on some newer data points, just recently acquired." "Understood," Ilara replied calmly. "And on slide 17, the proposed vendor partnerships. My initial research, submitted on February 28th, highlighted specific clauses in Vendor C's contract that might pose a compliance risk for our European operations. Have those specific risks been mitigated in the latest version of the proposal, or is there a contingency plan in place?" Thorne's forced smile faltered. He looked at Miss Davies, then nervously at Mr. Harrison in the front row. The room was beginning to shift. Shareholders were leaning forward, sensing something unusual. Ilara wasn't being aggressive. She was simply asking highly detailed technical questions that revealed her deep, granular knowledge of the project, knowledge Thorne clearly lacked. Each question was a subtle, precise dagger, surgically dissecting her false claims without raising her voice. Her English, once prone to emotional outbursts, was now a tool of surgical precision, each word chosen for maximum impact. Mr. Harrison, from his seat, began to look uncomfortable. He knew, as did others in the room, the painstaking detail Ilara put into her work. The discrepancy was becoming obvious. "Ilara," Miss Davies interjected, her voice gaining a new edge of realization. "Perhaps we can discuss these technical points in more detail during the Q&A session after the formal presentations. For now, let's move forward." It was a quiet acknowledgement, a subtle shift in the dynamic. Ilara nodded, her calm facade unbroken. "Certainly, Miss Davies. I simply wanted to ensure full transparency for our stakeholders." She sat down, her heart still thrumming, but now with a quiet sense of triumph, not rage. The rest of the meeting, Thorne's presentation felt hollow. The air in the room, once thick with anticipation for his supposed brilliance, was now filled with a subtle undercurrent of doubt. His answers to other questions were vague, lacking the detail that Ilara's questions had so effortlessly exposed. Later that day, Miss Davies called Ilara into her office. "Ilara," she began, her voice serious, "what happened in that meeting?" Ilara, now calm and collected, explained, presenting her documented evidence methodically, without a hint of anger or accusation, letting the facts speak for themselves. She detailed the timeline of her work, the communications with Thorne, and how her ideas had clearly been appropriated. She spoke in clear, concise English, every sentence demonstrating her control and professionalism.
Miss Davies listened intently. "I had a feeling," she admitted, looking distressed. "Thorne pushed very hard to present this. Mr. Harrison backed him. I should have looked closer. Your composure, your questions in there were brilliant. They saved the project, and quite frankly, they saved your reputation." She paused, then added, "More than that, Ilara, they proved that true strength isn't about how loudly you speak, but how clearly you think." Ilara's decision to pause, to observe, and to respond strategically instead of reacting impulsively had not only protected her intellectual property, but had also elevated her standing within the company. She had faced the biggest storm of her career, and instead of being capsized by it, she had navigated it with a quiet, unshakable strength. She realized with a profound sense of clarity that the true power of not reacting wasn't about avoiding conflict, but about engaging with it on her own terms, with wisdom and purpose. It was the moment the conscious pause transformed from a difficult practice into an undeniable force, enabling her to use her language, her English, not as a tool for emotional release, but as a precise instrument for strategic communication. Chapter 5: The Ripple Effect. The aftermath of the shareholder meeting was swift and decisive. Mr. Harrison, his face a mask of barely concealed fury, launched an internal investigation into Richard Thorne's conduct. Within days, Thorne was quietly reassigned, his star abruptly fallen. Miss Davies, impressed, and perhaps a little chastened by Ilara's composure and undeniable evidence, became her fiercest advocate. Ilara's Synergy project, now rightfully credited to her, received the green light, propelled forward by the very questions that had exposed Thorne's deceit. This victory, however, wasn't about revenge or gloating. For Ilara, it was a profound affirmation of the conscious pause. She had faced her personal tidal wave, and instead of being swept away, she had navigated it with strategic calm, using her words not as weapons of anger, but as tools of truth.
Ethical wisdom. The responsible observer. With great power comes great responsibility. Your ability to observe and deduce human behavior is powerful, and it must be wielded ethically. Your inner detective is a tool for understanding, not for manipulation or judgment. Respect privacy. Do not use your skills to intrude on private moments or to gather information for malicious purposes. Observation is about general patterns and understanding, not spying. Avoid judgment. Your goal is to understand, not to condemn. A nervous fidget doesn't make someone a bad person, it makes them a nervous person. Suspending judgment allows for more accurate and empathetic interpretations. Confirm, don't conclude. Your observations are clues, not definitive truths. Use them to form hypotheses, then seek verbal confirmation or further evidence. For instance, if you observe a colleague is stressed, cluster of cues, you don't accuse them. You might empathetically ask, "You seem to have a lot on your plate lately. Is everything all right?" This invites them to open up if they choose. Empathy as your guide. The ultimate purpose of observation is to foster deeper empathy and connection. By understanding why someone might be behaving a certain way, you can respond with greater compassion and effectiveness, building stronger relationships in both your personal and professional life. This empathy, when expressed in English, elevates your communication beyond mere words to genuine human connection. If you're committed to becoming a truly wise and ethical observer, and to using these skills to advance your English fluency, share your favorite tip from this chapter in the comments below. We love hearing from our community. By consistently practicing these practical tools and adhering to these ethical guidelines, you are not just becoming a keen observer, you are evolving into a wise and empathetic individual. Your inner detective will become an invaluable asset, allowing you to navigate complex social landscapes, build deeper relationships, and make more informed decisions. For you, the English learner, these practical exercises seamlessly integrate language acquisition with real-world understanding. You're not just learning English words, you're learning the unspoken language of culture, emotion, and human interaction, making you truly fluent and confident in any English-speaking environment. This prepares you for the ultimate transformation we'll discuss next. Chapter 7. Your transformation. Wiser, more confident, fluent. We have reached the culmination of our profound journey, a transformation from merely seeing the world to truly understanding it. You began this journey as an everyday observer, perhaps missing subtle cues, feeling unsure in social interactions, or struggling to grasp the deeper meanings in English conversations. But now you are emerging as an accomplished inner detective, equipped with an extraordinary superpower, the art of discerning observation. This final chapter isn't just a summary, it's a celebration of your metamorphosis, detailing the immense interconnected benefits you've unlocked, and solidifying how these skills seamlessly enhance your journey towards true English fluency and unwavering confidence. Recall the bustling coffee shop from Chapter 1. Where you once saw only people, your trained eye now discerns the barista's subtle signs of fatigue, the unspoken affection in a couple's shared glance, or the hidden impatience of a business executive. You've learned to differentiate between seeing and observing, recognizing that the richest data often lies beyond the spoken word. In Chapter 2, we armed you with the foundational elements, the expressive power of body language, the emotional music of tone of voice, and the revealing nuances of word choice. You've mastered recognizing these core layers. Then, in Chapter 3, you delved into the intricate world of nonverbal cues, becoming adept at spotting fleeting microexpressions, interpreting the silent stories told by eye contact, understanding the vast vocabulary of gestures, and respecting the unseen boundaries of proxemics. You practiced the silent movie exercise, learning to read entire narratives without uttering a single word. In Chapter 4, you refined your active listening skills, moving beyond merely hearing to truly absorbing the unheard conversations. You learned to identify patterns in speech, detect inconsistencies between verbal and nonverbal signals, and even interpret the profound meanings embedded within silence. Finally, Chapter 5 instilled in you the paramount importance of context, recognizing that environment, culture, and relationship dynamics are the vital lenses through which all observations must be filtered, helping you avoid misinterpretations and biases. We even revisited Bill Gates' monumental mistake, not just as a historical event, but as a vivid lesson in the dire consequences of failing to observe changing contexts. In Chapter 6, we equipped you with practical tools like spotting and noting and the context checker, along with the crucial ethical wisdom to use your powers for empathy and understanding, not judgment or manipulation. Looking back at your journey through these chapters, which specific observational skill do you feel has most significantly changed your perspective on daily interactions? And how has this newfound awareness already begun to transform your English learning process? The cumulative impact of mastering these skills is nothing short of transformative. You are no longer a passive passenger in your interactions, you are the astute navigator, charting a course through the complexities of human behavior. Enhanced communication. You now possess an unparalleled ability to communicate effectively. You don't just speak, you connect. You understand unspoken needs, anticipate reactions, and tailor your messages to truly resonate. Imagine delivering a presentation in English and reading the subtle cues from your audience, a confused frown, a nodding head, or a shifting posture. You can adjust your explanation on the fly, ensuring your message lands perfectly. Deeper relationships.
Your personal connections will flourish. By understanding and absorbing the nuanced emotions of friends, family, and colleagues, you can offer more genuine empathy, build stronger bonds of trust, and navigate conflicts with greater wisdom. Your ability to pick up on a friend's hidden stress, even when they say "I'm fine," allows you to be a truly supportive presence, going beyond superficial pleasantries. Wiser decisions. In professional settings, your observations become invaluable intelligence. You can better assess a job candidate's true character, detect a hidden agenda in a negotiation, or gauge the genuine buy-in of your team members. This profound understanding of human dynamics translates directly into more informed, strategic, and ultimately wiser decisions, both in business and in life. Just as Bill Gates learned the hard way about missed market shifts, you're now equipped to spot critical human shifts. Increased confidence. Perhaps most importantly, you will feel a profound increase in self-confidence. The world will no longer feel like an unpredictable maze. Instead, you'll see it as a complex yet decipherable puzzle. This confidence will empower you to step into any social situation, any negotiation, any English conversation, knowing you possess the tools to understand and connect meaningfully.
This event solidified Ilara's standing. She was no longer just the one who didn't react, but the one who responded with unparalleled clarity and wisdom. She had learned to channel her energy not into immediate emotional discharge, but into strategic action and thoughtful communication. The ripple effect of her inner transformation was evident everywhere, in the calm hum of her team, in the trust of her colleagues, and in the growing respect of her superiors. She had not only mastered her own reactions, but had become a beacon of calm and clarity for others, a true master of the subtle art of the conscious pause, reflecting her growing mastery over English as a tool for sophisticated and impactful communication. Ilara's journey shows us that true strength is not just about reacting, but about responding with wisdom. If you're inspired by how she turned a crisis into a calm solution, take a moment to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Chapter 6: The Art of Living. Weeks turned into months, and the dramatic events of the shareholder meeting and the global innovations crisis slowly faded into company lore. Yet, for Ilara, their impact was profound and permanent. The conscious pause was no longer a forced practice, but a natural rhythm, an intrinsic part of her being. She no longer had to consciously remind herself to breathe or observe. The space between stimulus and response had widened organically, becoming a vast, calm ocean where wisdom could truly bloom. This was her new normal, a life lived with intentionality and grace. Her days were still filled with challenges, deadlines, and unexpected bumps, but her internal landscape had been transformed. The small daily irritations that once fueled her quick temper now merely rippled the surface of her calm. A spilled coffee, a missed call, a sarcastic comment from a distant relative, these events no longer triggered the familiar hot flush or the surge of immediate defensive words. Instead, Ilara would take a silent breath, acknowledge the fleeting annoyance, and then decide on a proportional, constructive response, or no response at all. One Monday morning, her train was unexpectedly delayed, turning her usual 20-minute commute into an hour-long ordeal. The carriage was packed, hot, and restless. Passengers groaned, muttered curses, and checked their watches with increasing desperation. The old Ilara would have felt a surge of frustrated anger, directed at the railway company, at the universe, at the injustice of it all. She would have fumed internally, ruining her mood before her workday even began. But the new Ilara simply took out her small notebook. Instead of letting the irritation fester, she used the unexpected downtime.
She jotted down ideas for a new marketing campaign, sketching out flowcharts and brainstorming catchy slogans. She observed the frustrated faces around her, not with judgment, but with a quiet understanding, a subtle empathy for their shared predicament. When the train finally lurched forward, Ilara felt productive and surprisingly calm. She had transformed a moment of potential frustration into an opportunity for quiet creativity. She found herself mentally forming sentences in English to describe the scene, the collective emotion, and her own shift in perspective, refining her vocabulary for nuanced description. At work, her quiet transformation continued to inspire. Colleagues, noticing her consistent composure, would sometimes approach her, hesitantly at first, seeking advice. Her desk became a subtle hub for calm conversations. Her friend and colleague, Sarah, often stressed and overwhelmed by project demands, came to her one afternoon visibly upset. "I just don't know what to do, Ilara," Sarah confessed, running a hand through her hair. "Mark in accounting just dismissed my entire report, saying it was too theoretical and not practical enough. I spent weeks on that. I just want to march over there and tell him exactly what I think of his limited mindset." The old Ilara would have immediately sided with Sarah, fueled her anger, and perhaps even encouraged a confrontation. But Ilara now simply listened. She let Sarah vent, her presence a steady, non-judgmental anchor. When Sarah finally paused, Ilara asked softly, "And what would that confrontation achieve, Sarah? Would it make your report more practical? Would it change Mark's opinion, or just solidify his resistance?" Sarah frowned, thinking, "Well, no, I guess not. It would just make me feel better for a minute, and then probably worse later." "Exactly," Ilara said gently. "So, if the goal is to get your report acknowledged and implemented, how might you approach Mark not from a place of reaction, but from a place of strategy? What if you consider his feedback not as a personal attack, but as a different perspective? Perhaps there's a kernel of truth there, or at least an opportunity to reframe your brilliant ideas in a way that resonates with his practical mindset." She didn't tell Sarah what to do, but how to think about it, how to create that space, that pause, to shift from emotional reaction to strategic response. Sarah's face softened as she considered Ilara's words. "So you're saying, don't just react to his criticism, but try to understand why he said it, and then find a way to meet him where he is." "Precisely," Ilara smiled. "Imagine your thoughts as a beautiful garden. You wouldn't let weeds grow wild, would you? You'd tend to it, nourish the flowers, and pull out the weeds carefully. Mark's comment is just a weed that appeared. You can rip it out aggressively and damage the soil, or you can gently remove it, perhaps even plant something new and stronger in its place." Ilara used this analogy naturally, drawing on the refined descriptive language she had gained through her practice. She was now able to explain complex emotional concepts using vivid, relatable English metaphors, making her advice not only insightful but also memorable. Sarah left Ilara's desk a few minutes later, still troubled, but now with a new lightness in her step, armed with a fresh perspective. The next day, she approached Mark, not with anger, but with a series of thoughtful questions about his concerns. The conversation, which could have been a heated argument, became a constructive dialogue, leading to a revised report that incorporated Mark's practical insights and ultimately earned his full support. Ilara's own life flourished. Her relationships, once strained by her impulsiveness, became deeper, more trusting. Her brother, Liam, found himself calling her not just to complain, but to seek her calm counsel. Her professional career continued its upward trajectory. She was trusted with more complex projects, her opinions valued, her presence a calming influence in any high-stakes meeting. She had not become emotionless. On the contrary, she felt her emotions more deeply, but she was no longer controlled by them. She was the conductor of her own inner orchestra, not a frantic instrument caught in a cacophony. She continued to engage with the graded reader materials, finding new ways to describe her journey, to articulate the nuances of emotional intelligence, and to broaden her English vocabulary related to self-awareness, conflict resolution, and leadership. Phrases like emotional regulation, cognitive reappraisal, and interpersonal dynamics became part of her natural lexicon, allowing her to express herself with greater precision and sophistication. Her ability to articulate her thoughts clearly, even under pressure, and to understand complex ideas presented in English had grown exponentially. It was a testament to how mastering one's inner reactions could directly enhance one's command over language. Ilara's journey was far from over. Life would always present new challenges, new waves to navigate. But she now possessed the compass, the map, and the unshakable inner anchor. She had discovered that the truest power lay not in the immediate forceful punch, but in the deliberate, gentle pull. Not in the explosive reaction, but in the profound, wise response. It was the art of living, consciously, calmly, and with boundless impact. Chapter 7. Your Own Journey. Ilara's journey had brought her to a place of profound inner peace and outer effectiveness. Her life, once a turbulent sea of impulsive reactions, was now a calm, navigable ocean. The conscious pause had become her compass, guiding her through the choppiest waters. She excelled in her career not by being the loudest voice, but by being the clearest. Her relationships deepened, rooted in understanding and genuine connection, free from the destructive fires of unthinking responses. She had not become emotionless, but truly emotionally intelligent, able to feel deeply yet choose wisely. This was the true art of living, not avoiding the storms, but learning to dance gracefully in the rain. Her story is a testament to a universal truth. The most significant power we possess is not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering the world within. It's the strength found in that tiny yet infinite space between an event and your chosen response. This space is where clarity resides, where wisdom blossoms, and where true freedom is found. Perhaps as you followed Ilara's path, you've seen echoes of your own struggles, moments where a quick word or an impulsive action led to regret. You might be asking yourself, can I really do this? Can I learn to find that pause, to choose my response rather than simply react? The answer is a resounding yes. Like Ilara, you don't need to strive for perfection, but for progress. Begin with awareness. Notice that familiar surge of anger, that prickle of frustration. Take a conscious breath. Ask yourself, is this serving me? This small, deliberate act is your first step onto the path of stillness. And here's a beautiful secret. As you cultivate this inner calm, as you learn to choose your responses with intention, your ability to communicate will transform. When your mind is clear, your thoughts become precise. When your emotions are regulated, your words flow with greater fluency and impact. Practicing the art of not reacting will inevitably enhance your English, allowing you to articulate complex feelings, negotiate difficult situations, and express your true self with a newfound clarity and confidence. You will find yourself choosing words more carefully, constructing sentences more thoughtfully, and speaking with a poise that reflects your inner mastery. The journey to improve your English fluency is not just about vocabulary and grammar, it's about the conscious control and intentionality that underpins all effective communication. So, how will you begin your journey? Will you commit to finding that conscious pause, even in the smallest moments of your day? Start with just one breath, one moment of observation, one chosen word instead of an impulsive shout. If Ilara's story has resonated with you, if it has sparked a desire to cultivate your own inner strength and enhance your communication skills, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone you know who might benefit from this powerful message. Your engagement helps us create more content that empowers you. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more insights into personal growth and practical strategies for improving your English fluency. And perhaps leave a comment below, sharing one small step you plan to take this week to practice the power of not reacting. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, the journey inward is the most rewarding adventure. Embrace the pause, embrace the choice, and watch as your life and your command of language transforms.